There's a moment in every winner's journey that has nothing to do with the spotlight, the crowd, or the medal. It happens in silence, often in doubt. It's the moment they ask themselves one simple but life-defining question. Why am I doing this? That's where the mindset that separates winners truly begins. Not with talent, not with motivation, not even with hard work, but with why. We tend to look at winners as extraordinary, the kind of people who possess a strength most of us don't. And yes, they have discipline, they work hard, they show up when others quit. But those are not the qualities that create a winner. They are the result of something deeper. They come from a foundation, a belief, a cause. The great paradox is this. Winners aren't driven by the desire to win. They're driven by the desire to matter. Think of the people you admire most in sports, business, art, activism. What truly separates them isn't just skill, it's intention. They know why they do what they do, and that clarity gives them something almost unshakable, direction. Most people chase results, but winners, they chase purpose. Let me tell you about a young athlete. He wasn't the fastest on the track, he didn't have the best gear or the most supportive environment, but every morning, before the sun even rose, he laced up his shoes and trained like the world was watching, even though no one was, not yet. What fueled him wasn't the hope of a gold medal. It wasn't even to beat someone else. It was something deeper. He ran for the memory of a brother he lost too young, someone who had believed in him more than he believed in himself. That why burned inside him, louder than any cheer, stronger, and it carried him through the days when every muscle screamed, when every voice said, it's not worth it. But for him, it always was. That's what purpose does. It's not flashy. It doesn't always look like inspiration. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion, like resilience, like still showing up. But it's always real. It's what keeps winners on the path long after the crowd has gone home. Here's the problem. Most people start with what? What should I do? What's the goal? What do others expect from me? And then they ask how. How do I get there? How do I become successful? But they forget to ask the one question that fuels everything else. Why is this worth doing in the first place? When you don't know your why, every failure feels like a reason to quit. Every challenge feels personal. Every delay feels like rejection. But when you do know your why, those same challenges become part of the journey, not the end of it. You stop measuring your progress only by outcomes and start valuing the process. You begin to understand that effort is never wasted when it's aligned with purpose. Winners don't just work harder, they believe harder. And that belief starts from within. That's what gives them the courage to say no to shortcuts. That's what helps them endure when others burn out. That's why they can keep climbing even when the peak is nowhere in sight. There's something powerful about waking up and knowing why your actions matter. Purpose creates alignment. It makes decisions easier. It filters out noise. It allows you to say, this is for me or this is not for me with confidence, not because you're arrogant, but because you're clear. Clarity isn't the absence of doubt. It's the ability to move forward despite it. That's what a strong why gives you. It won't always give you the feeling of confidence, but it will give you the reason to act even when you're scared. Even when you're standing at the edge of uncertainty with nothing but your principles to guide you. When you lead with why, you're not just chasing an achievement, you're building something that lasts, something that matters, and you're no longer comparing yourself to others because your race isn't theirs. Your path has meaning beyond metrics, and that's what makes you unstoppable. People often confuse confidence with clarity. They think winners are fearless. But the truth is, winners are often afraid. The difference is, they've chosen something bigger than fear to follow. That's what anchors them. That's what keeps them from quitting when it gets hard. And it always gets hard. Purpose gives pain a place to go. When you're fueled by why, even setbacks serve you. They teach you, they refine you, and most importantly, they remind you that you're still on the path, still becoming. Now, does this mindset guarantee success? No, but it guarantees meaning. It guarantees that no matter the outcome, You are building a life that aligns with who you are, not just what others think you should be. And sometimes that's the biggest win of all. Because in the end, it's not the medals we remember, it's the people who stood for something, the ones who moved us, not because they won, but because of how and why they showed up. Winners leave a legacy not just in what they did, but in why they did it. So if you want to separate yourself, if you want to live and lead with the mindset of a winner, don't start with a goal. Don't start with a strategy. Start with a reason. Find your why and let it lead you through the noise, through the doubt, through the grind. That's where winners are made. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. We treat it like the end of the road, something shameful, something to avoid. But those who truly win in life don't see it that way. To them, failure isn't a verdict. It's not a dead end. It's a signal, a whisper that says, not this way, not yet, but keep going. We grow up in a system that trains us to fear failure, red marks on tests, grades that define worth, expectations that say if you fail, you've lost. So by the time we step into adulthood, most of us are already programmed to equate failure with inadequacy, with weakness. But here's the truth, that winners learn early. Failure isn't personal. It's directional. Winners don't fear failure because they've redefined what it means. It's not a reflection of who they are. It's information. It's data. It's a moment that offers insight. It tells them what didn't work, where to adapt, and how to get stronger. And while most people let failure stop them, winners let it shape them. Let's pause here. Think about someone you consider successful, not because of their money or status, but because of how they carry themselves. Chances are, if you dug into their story, you'd find not just one failure, but a pattern of them. And yet those failures didn't break them, they built them. There's a powerful story of a young entrepreneur who started 3 companies before his 4th finally took off. Each time he failed, he faced embarrassment, doubt, and debt. People stopped returning his calls. He began questioning if he was cut out for this. But instead of burying the lessons, he studied them. What did I miss? What wasn't aligned? What could I do differently? When that 4th company found traction, it wasn't luck. It was layers of learned failure that made it possible. What the world saw as overnight success was just the result of years spent listening to the signals. The reason most people never reach their potential isn't because they don't have talent. It's because they misinterpret failure. They take it personally. They make it mean something it doesn't. They say, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. But winners ask a different question. What is this failure trying to teach me? The mindset that separates winners is not that they fail less. It's that they fail better. They process it, they reflect, they adjust, and most importantly, they keep moving. Failure to them is part of the process, not proof that they're on the wrong path. In fact, if you're not failing at something, it probably means you're playing too safe, you're avoiding risk, you're sticking to what you already know, and that's not how growth happens. But the real danger isn't in failing, it's in allowing failure to define your story. It's in letting it close the chapter instead of fueling the next one. When we stop because we're afraid to fail again, we're not protecting ourselves, we're limiting ourselves. And the tragedy is that we never get to find out what could have been if we had just tried one more time. Failure is feedback, and the most powerful leaders, athletes, creators, and change makers in the world treat it that way. They don't avoid hard conversations, they don't hide from critique, they lean into it. Because they understand that growth doesn't come from comfort, it comes from correction. One of the most courageous things a person can do is to look failure in the face and say, thank you. Thank you for showing me where I was misaligned. Thank you for exposing what I didn't want to see. Thank you for giving me a new lens. That gratitude doesn't come naturally. It's built, one setback at a time, through a mindset that refuses to let failure become final. Now, this doesn't mean failure won't hurt. Of course it will. It stings. It challenges your identity. It makes you doubt. But there's a difference between pain and paralysis. Winners feel the pain, but they don't let it paralyze them. They sit with it, learn from it, and move forward with more clarity than before. That's the signal. That's what separates those who endure from those who exit. And what's remarkable is that failure, when handled well, builds something far more valuable than just skill. It builds humility. It keeps you grounded. It teaches you that you're never above learning, never above improvement. It teaches you to listen to others, to the process, to yourself. And in that humility, you become more trustworthy, more relatable, more resilient. In a world that worships perfection, there is something deeply human and deeply attractive about someone who owns their failure and grows through it. People don't follow those who have never fallen. They follow those who've fallen and stood back up, wiser, clearer, more determined. If you're in a season of failure, if you've hit a wall, lost your footing, or watched something you believed in fall apart, you are not broken. You are being built. The signal is not saying stop. It's saying pause, assess, adapt, then go again. That pause isn't weakness. It's strategy. The ones who win aren't the ones who avoid falling. They're the ones who learn how to rise with intention. So the next time you fail, and you will, don't rush past it. Don't hide it. Listen, learn. Ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? That simple shift changes everything. Because when failure becomes a teacher instead of a threat, you become unstoppable. Remember, the ones who achieve something extraordinary in life don't just have vision, they have resilience. And resilience isn't built in moments of comfort. It's built in the valley, in the messy middle, in the space between falling and rising again. That's where the real transformation happens. The mindset that separates winners doesn't eliminate failure, it reclaims it. It turns every loss into a lesson, every misstep into momentum, and it trusts that every detour has the potential to shape a deeper kind of success, the kind that lasts. We live in a culture obsessed with intensity, big wins, dramatic transformations, all or nothing moments. We celebrate the person who loses 50 pounds in a month. We applaud the entrepreneur who made it overnight. We idolize the viral post, the breakout success, the meteoric rise. But here's the truth that often gets lost in the noise. Greatness is not built in bursts, it's built in repetition, in rhythm, in routine. The mindset that separates winners isn't found in intense spurts of effort. It's found in quiet, deliberate consistency. Most people get inspired to start. Few stay committed to continue. That's the difference. Anyone can give everything they have for a day, but what happens when the motivation fades, when no one is watching, when the applause has stopped and the challenge still remains? That's when winners reveal themselves. Not in a single act of greatness, but in the decision to show up again and again, long after the emotion is gone. Consistency is boring. That's why most people resist it. It lacks the adrenaline of new beginnings or the thrill of big achievements. But winners understand that boredom is not the enemy, it's the path. Repetition refines, routine strengthens, showing up daily, even imperfectly, creates momentum that intensity never can. Imagine a musician who practices for 5 hours one day, then puts their instrument away for a week. Then they do it again. That's intensity. Now compare that to someone who plays for 30 minutes every single day, no matter how they feel. Which one do you think improves more over time? Who builds muscle memory? Who deepens their understanding of their craft? It's obvious. The one who was consistent. Because mastery is not about extreme effort once. It's about purposeful effort often. The problem is that we romanticize intensity. It looks better on social media. It creates dramatic stories. I stayed up all night building this. I ran 20 miles without training. I wrote a book in a weekend. But none of those things last. They spark attention, but they don't build legacy. Consistency may not get you noticed immediately, but it keeps you going when others fade out. There's something profoundly human about the struggle to stay consistent. We all want progress, but we crave novelty. The idea of doing the same thing every day can feel restrictive, like we're missing out on something more exciting. But real freedom isn't found in chaos. It's found in discipline. When your actions are aligned with a deeper purpose, repetition becomes a form of reinforcement, not limitation. Winners don't just build habits, they honor them. They understand that every time they show up, they're not just checking a box. They are casting a vote for the kind of person they want to become. Each workout, each page written, each conversation, each step forward, however small, becomes part of something bigger. There's a story of a writer who committed to writing just 500 words a day. It's not much, maybe half a page. But he did it every single day for 5 years. No matter what, even on vacation, even when he was tired, even when the words came slow. At the end of those 5 years, he didn't just have books, he had confidence, discipline, clarity. Because consistency doesn't just produce outcomes, it changes identity. You start seeing yourself not as someone who occasionally tries, but as someone who is a runner, a leader, a builder, a writer. Identity is not formed in moments of intensity. It's shaped through consistent action. That's why winners rarely talk about motivation, because motivation is fleeting, it's unreliable, it shows up when it wants to, and disappears when things get hard. But consistency doesn't ask how you feel, it asks what you value. And if what you value is growth, purpose, or excellence, then you show up even when it's inconvenient. That doesn't mean every day will be perfect, it won't be. Winners understand that consistency doesn't mean never missing, it means never quitting. It means choosing the long game. It means having the humility to start again when you fall off track. Because missing one day isn't failure, giving up is. When you embrace consistency, you begin to understand the power of compounding effort. Just like money invested over time grows exponentially, so do your habits. What feels small today becomes significant tomorrow. One good choice multiplies into better ones. One day of action becomes a week becomes a month, and slowly, without fanfare, transformation happens. The challenge is that this transformation isn't visible at first. That's why so many people quit too soon. They expect quick results. And when they don't see them, they assume it's not working. But the truth is, the results of consistency are always delayed. The change is happening beneath the surface, in your mindset, your resilience, your clarity, long before it becomes visible to others. There's nothing glamorous about waking up early to do something that feels hard and goes unnoticed. But every time you do, you reinforce a truth that matters more than any outcome. I keep my word to myself. That's the mindset that builds trust, not just with others, but with your own potential. In a world chasing intensity, consistency becomes a quiet rebellion. It's the slow, steady rhythm of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, because they're too busy building something. And that something is a foundation that will last when the hype dies down. If you want to separate yourself, start small. Pick something you care about, something that matters, and commit to showing up for it every day. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly, consistently. And let that commitment become part of who you are. Because in the end, intensity impresses, but consistency transforms. And the people who leave a legacy, who change the game, who redefine what's possible,